Hi, everyone. Tonight, we're going to take this entire hour to do a deep dive looking at the border and immigration crisis. We're going to be digging into the numbers as to what's really happening with two people who acted as the director of ICE under President Trump and Obama. They can talk about this with facts, not talking points. If you watch MSNBC or CNN, the border crisis is largely about the GOP just trying to gin up outrage for political gain. If you watch Fox News or other conservative networks, President Biden and Democrats just want to let everyone and anyone into the country. Now, here we're taking this issue seriously, without the hyperbole or the political spin. We will let the actual numbers speak for themselves and talk to our guests about what actually can be done and who is to blame. There is simply no doubt that there has been a major spike in migrants coming over during the last year. In the fiscal year 2019, which runs from October 1, 2018 through September 30, 2019, just over 977,000 migrants crossed the southern border and were allowed to stay under Title VIII, where migrants are processed and are allowed to stay in the country while their case goes through the system. In fiscal year 2020, that number dropped to just over 253,000. That's attributed to Title 42, which was the Public Health Service Act enacted during COVID, which was used to expel large numbers of migrants at the border. For 2021, when the Biden administration took the reins, the number jumped to 671,160, and for the 2022 fiscal year, which just ended, the numbers took a serious jump, over 1,149,000 people. And these are just the people who properly registered. So yes, the numbers have increased significantly, and many are asking the question, is the Biden administration to blame? Or are there other factors at play? After all, the administration has been saying they don't want migrants coming over.
I want to be clear to folks in this region who are thinking about making that dangerous trek to the United States-Mexico border. Do not come. Do not come.
But it doesn't seem to be working. This past summer, the Biden administration did away with the Trump administration's Remain in Mexico policy, which was enacted in 2019, and required those seeking asylum from the U.S. to stay in Mexico while their claims are being adjudicated. They're also trying to do away with Title 42. It's been extended several times, first by the Trump administration, then by the Biden White House, but now the Biden administration arguing it's time for the policy to go. And getting rid of Title 42 would change the game for sure. Over the last fiscal year, over 1 million migrants who crossed the border were immediately removed in accordance with Title 42. Tonight we have two perfect guests to discuss multiple topics with us. John Sandwig, former acting director of ICE under former President Obama, and Ron Vitiello, former deputy director and acting director of ICE under former President Trump. Gentlemen, thanks so much for coming on the program. Appreciate it. John, let me start with you. Big picture, do you think it's fair to lay at least some of the blame for the major increases at the hands of the Biden administration?
No, Dan, look, there certainly were some misstatements, I think, in the very beginning of the administration. I know that I think if you asked Secretary Mayorkas or the White House, if they could take some of those statements back that they made in the initial days, I think they would. But really what we're seeing is a trend that's been going on, frankly, since the tail end of the Obama administration, continued during the Trump administration, decelerated when the pandemic first hit, but has continued unabated. There is a mass migration at our southern border, whether you want to call it a crisis or you want to call it anything else. The bottom line is we have a massive influx, really, that's unprecedented in history. The problem with this, too, though, is that the tactics have changed the people who are coming. Today, the majority of these individuals are claiming asylum, and frankly, they've overwhelmed the system as a result. But no, look, I think that it's a real misnomer, and I think we all do ourselves a disservice in terms of our border security policies and our approach to dealing with this problem when we make it political and partisan. Yep. This has been going on through multiple administrations, and really what you're seeing under the Biden administration is really essentially the same as what we're seeing under the Trump administration.
I'm going to ask about solutions in a moment, but first let me let John weigh in on the same question that I just asked about whether it's fair to lay some of the blame of the increase at the hands of the Biden administration.
It's fair. It's more than fair. It's the commander-in-chief. He sets the tone for policy. This was presaged in his campaign. It was presaged in the primary. They ran on a ticket of we're going to fix the border. And then every chance they've gotten to make an adjustment on the border or describe what the problem or the challenge is, they've taken a step back from the rule of law. This is all about incentives. And, you know, it's where the policy is, where it should be, and where it's going. We can talk about that. But what was working when they took over, we had 40-year lows in activity on the southwest border. Right now, we have the largest surge that border has ever seen. Between 6,000 and 8,000 people are crossing the border every single 24 hours. As John said, it's overwhelming every system that's in place to deal with it.
You know, I don't usually do debates on this show, but you both are so highly qualified on this topic, and you guys are sort of the perfect guests that I do want to let John respond to that. John, go ahead.
Well, I think, look, and I think Ron would agree with me, prior to the COVID hitting, the numbers were pretty close to what we're seeing today. Certainly, they're up a little bit. The Biden administration is being a little more permissive in terms of who they're going to exercise this Title 42 authority against. But look, I would argue that this is a trend that, you know, when Ron and I were both at DHS together on the tail end of the administration, we saw a seismic shift in what was going on at the border, where we saw a rapid change from a majority of people were Mexican nationals trying to evade capture into the United States to a transition to Central Americans, and now, frankly, even broader than that. Look, whether or not, I don't think that there's any simple political solutions to this. This is a serious problem that I really hope, you know, that we can rise above the partisan debate and find some solutions here, because the politics haven't worked at the border in 20, 30 years. Our immigration system remains broken because the political rhetoric that just keeps everything frozen in place.
And Ron, I'll let you respond to that, but I'm also going to throw a question at you as well, which is, it does seem that it's hopeless to hope that Congress is going to fix this, right? Because there are such disincentives on both sides to get anything done here, meaning if there's a compromise, the far right gets upset and the far left gets upset about any compromise that was made on this hot-button issue. And it seems to me that it's nearly impossible that Congress is going to be able to solve it. And also feel free to respond to what John said as well.
Congress definitely plays a role here. The framework of immigration and how people claim asylum and what happens at our border has been a problem for a long time. When John and I worked together in the department in 2014, we saw unprecedented traffic of people, kids coming alone and people bringing small children to the border. We had never seen anything like that then. But at that time, the administration put steps in place. We started the family residential centers. ICE built those centers so that we could get the incentives right, so that people could come here. If they had a valid claim, they could wait in custody until they could have that claim heard. What's happening now is the exact opposite. And what happened in 2014 versus what's happening today was 1/5 the size. It's out of control. 2.5 million in a single fiscal year. We haven't seen numbers like that since the 90s. As John said, those were mostly people at that time in the 90s and part of the 2000s were folks from Mexico. This is 150 countries are represented on that southwest border. And they've taken no steps to try to fix it. When they took over, we had 40-year lows. We were in the tens of thousands of encounters per month, and now we're over 200,000 almost every month of this year.
And John, it does seem without congressional action, which again I can't believe that you're going to see, it does seem the disincentive becomes the critical point, right? The threat, the fear of coming here and feeling like you're not going to be able to get in is probably the best hope that we have, no?
Yeah, Dan, I hate to say it. Look, I think deterrence is critical. There are only two ways to stop a mass migration. One is to try to do more outside of the United States. It's exceedingly difficult. The Biden administration is trying to promote economic development in Central America and around the world, and doing, you know, what the Obama administration did and Trump, and that is trying to get Mexico to do a better job of securing their southern border. The bottom line, however, is that can only go so far, and those kind of fixes really are not quick fixes. Meanwhile, we're getting this 2.5 million people coming up to our border. So how do we deal with it here? Unfortunately, I think where Ron and I would disagree is, how do you disincentivize people? In my mind, though, the key is we have to remove people. We have to send a message to people that, hey, you cannot come here and make an asylum claim, and because the system is overwhelmed, get a free pass into the United States. And I really do, I bet we agree on this, that the fact that there were only 59,000 ICE removals last year is probably the biggest problem at all. We're not keeping up anywhere near keeping up with what's coming on at the border, but it provides no disincentive, no deterrent to individuals. I don't think detention or even, the Trump administration tried family separation with horrific results. None of that has really worked to deter people. They're fleeing horrific conditions. But deportations would be that deterrent, and that's what we're failing to do, is actually when people have an asylum claim denied, there's no removal at the end of that. People are still allowed to stay here.
Ron, final thought on that?
No, it's about the incentives. There's too many people coming to the border that aren't even being apprehended or even being encountered by law enforcement, and many of the people that CBP takes into custody are then being released in the United States because of the way the framework works. So Migrant Protection Protocols was not a perfect program, but it made Mexico act on our behalf, on their own behalf, to try to secure the Mexico-Guatemala border. They put troops on their northern border to help these smugglers, to keep them from amassing these large groups that were distracting the Border Patrol. The incentives have to be right, and I agree. Policy will only get you so far. You need changes in the framework. But we're not even trying. The first days of this presidency, they tried to put a moratorium on removals and deportations. They've made several public statements about ICE priorities and said that if you're in the country illegally, we're not going to look for you. Mm-hmm. So the incentives are all wrong right now.
All right. Again, I want to remind people we have two people who have both served as the director of ICE under Obama and under Trump. So this is a really good opportunity to have a serious conversation about this. So John and Ron, please stay with us. Thank you for watching. Go to NewsNationNow.com to find NewsNation on your cable provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.